Happy Wax on Wednesdays and happy Inktober. This week I have some papers left over from other projects. They're Unrio rice papers and they've been painted with encaustic in other projects. And I also have some Bombay India ink for Inktober. And I'm taking some really basic items and having a lot of fun with mark making in this India ink. And this is a clay scraper. It's probably the only real tool that I use in this whole process. The rest is a straw, some string, just things that you basically would have around. Anything that looks like it can make an interesting mark on this paper with the India ink. These papers have all been painted with encaustic paints on a heated palette in previous projects, and now it's just fun to enhance them with some mark making. And the Unrio rice papers are so fun to add India ink to, and especially when they already have these encaustic painted backgrounds. It's just a really fun accent, a little addition to these little papers, and no papers should be thrown away. You can always use them for different projects. I'm going to use these for little mini collages once I get done with the India ink mark making session. And if you'd like to know more about painting on these rice papers with encaustic, Encausticology Paper Journey Workshop, you can dive in anytime and have lifetime access 24/7. We make 3 different journals in that workshop to house all of the hundreds of papers that we paint with encaustic. So now I'm just taking this string and adding this is just some fun marks, and not just pressing it down and seeing what will happen with this ink and the string. It's just fun to take really anything and India ink and really make some fun marks. This string can make such different marks just by applying it in different ways. And the rice paper, of course, both absorbs the wax and the ink in beautiful ways. So it's just really fun to work with. And I've taken these papers and cut them in some really fun shapes, and some I tore, some I cut, and just kind of highlighting their little marks there and all their beautiful colors, and applying them to little encaustic minis. These are little 4x4 wooden substrates. I have about 3 or 4 layers of white encaustic underneath, and I am just sort of burnishing them down with a number 6 catalyst wedge while the substrate is warm. It's not squishy, but it's warm, and then applying a clear layer of encaustic over that to embed those pieces into the encaustic surface. And of course, every time I add a layer of encaustic, I fuse that layer to bond to the layers underneath. So every time I can add layers and layers and layers of these wonderful papers, and you can see all of the previous layers down back through the wax. But every time I do add a layer of encaustic, I make sure that I fuse that layer to bond to the previous layers underneath. So I'm working on 2 little minis here in this Wax on Wednesdays project, and it's just really fun to sort of highlight those papers and those marks that were just made in that mark making session to just cut them in smaller pieces and sort of highlight all those little details. And you see them sort of come alive when they're broken up into even smaller tidbits that you can use for some really fun collage. And this Unrio rice paper really works well for embedding for collage. So a lot of papers, you kind of have to test them out. Is it going to work for collage? Is it absorbent enough? Not all papers are great for collage. Some of them are too heavy, or they're not absorbent, and then they'll curl up on you. The Unrio rice paper is wonderful for collage. It lays down beautifully, and you're able to layer it wonderfully. It just really lends itself well to encaustic collage. So I really enjoy using that rice paper for this. And not all rice papers are the same either. They're made with different fibers, different thicknesses, different attributes to them. So it's really fun to play around with different rice papers and encaustic and see which ones work for which purpose. But this particular one works really well for collage. So here I'm just going to add some more white encaustic paint and sort of play around with the composition of this. Also, I'm able to scrape back when it's warm with that catalyst wedge, with that number 6 catalyst wedge. It's my favorite. It's my favorite catalyst wedge, and it's when the wax is warm, it's able to sort of scrape back a little bit without tearing at that paper. And I can also use my clay loop to scrape back as well. And this just enables me to sort of highlight or reveal those papers that I want to reveal, and leave the rest embedded in those layers of wax. So this is just a matter of once you get all your papers on, then you can really work with that composition and sort of play around with it. And here I'm using white encaustic paint to sort of focus on certain areas of my collage and enhance that composition, and at the same time also scraping back and sort of highlighting certain areas and it brings that color out, and that paper is still embedded with wax. It had wax on it to begin with. It was painted with encaustic paint, and it has wax absorbed into it, but it's just kind of bringing it to the surface a little bit and highlighting that color. And here I'm adding just some more India ink, finishing it off here with some good marks with India ink. This is just a little Dixie cup, and just sort of playing around and getting those final enhancements with a little pop with that black India ink. I hope you really enjoyed this week's Wax on Wednesdays project, and I'll leave a link below if you want to check out Encausticology Paper Journey and all sorts of different ways to paint with encaustic on a variety of different papers, a lot of variety of different papers. So I'll leave a link below for that workshop, and I will see you next week. Happy Wax on Wednesdays!